brother, yeah. My brother, yeah. My brother, yeah. My brother, yeah.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Hoopy, your host, one of them brothers from Inglewood podcast, coming to you live and direct. This is an interesting time and season for us. We're approaching summer, which happens June 20th, 2024. And I know a lot of people are very anxious to kind of get out in the open. And I want to say, before I get started, thank you for all of the chats and the comments that you have placed in the comment section. Thank you so much for your support. I'm going to ask if you would like, subscribe, share, and ring the notification button so that you'll be abreast as to when we're airing fresh and new episodes. Thanks again to all of you who have helped us by word of mouth to try and monetize this situation. It's much appreciated, and I'm so excited about the coming episodes. Listen, there has been something stirring. As always, we always try to compare the present to the past. We always try to delve into history and mention eras and different types of situations that occur in sports. And today won't be any different, because I want to speak specifically to an era of basketball talent that I believe that a lot of people have failed to mention, but also have failed to do the research. There are a few people that come to mind that I'm going to mention because this season this month, we're going to feature some of the top point guards to ever come out of Los Angeles. Yes, I believe that I can get in touch with a few people that will help that reality come into fruition. Now, today we're going to just talk about features on historical point guards from Los Angeles. Historical point guards from Los Angeles. I'm not going to give up all the business today because, like I said, I'm featuring some top point guards, and I got a very, very special one coming in this week to share some of his history and just some of the success and accolades that he's received over the years when he was a player. I think also we need to start categorizing and properly compartmentalizing these types of discussions. Why? Because number one, certain guys didn't get a chance to play against each other because they were in different eras. So with that being said, we can only really go on documentation, or I would just say reputation, notoriety, whatever those features were, and how the streets began to claim these certain individuals. And I think that is fair. It's only by the numbers that we can assess talent as it relates to not having the opportunity to play against one another. There are several unsung heroes that I believe from Los Angeles that actually did not get an opportunity to move on beyond high school. And then some, their careers were cut short in the process of high school. And so, you kind of got to take that in consideration, although the overall statistical numbers are the facts. And so I want to mention, and I'm telling you, you're going to be very excited when you see this person on our platform, because he's going to be able to share live and in color pertaining to his career and how different things transpired throughout his playing time. So let's get back to understanding why I say let's categorize players by their era, by their position, and more importantly, by what they actually did numbers-wise. And I think that helps with the debate, because a lot of people, they just begin to just add different sequences and scenarios that really don't constitute that person's total ability. I think you have to primarily go by eras. You have to go by statistics. What has these individuals done? What did they accomplish on the high school level? I am not talking about what they did in college. I'm not talking about what they did in the pros. I'm not talking about what they did professionally overseas. I'm strictly talking about Los Angeles history as it relates to the talent that has come out of Southern California. Now, another thing, I see guys mentioning and even posting on social media, guys from the East Coast, from the Midwest, guys from the South, guys from overseas, and all of these different things, and that's great. But let's stick to the question at hand. Who are some of the best athletes, basketball players, to come out of Los Angeles? We're talking about Los Angeles County, and then there's other ways to assess it as well, because some guys played for a Los Angeles County team, but they weren't actually from the city of Los Angeles. And so that's why it's better to just say Los Angeles County, simply because a lot of these guys were from other cities, including myself. I was actually born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. I lived on the east side of Los Angeles. We call that area the Low Bottoms, and that was maybe 25 minutes away from the west side, where I eventually moved to. I moved to Inglewood after the age of 7, and that's where I began the rest of my education, or that's where I completed the rest of my education, from elementary, middle school to high school. And in the city of Inglewood, I ended up staying within the Inglewood School District. I played for Inglewood teams. And so it's not about me, so I don't want to make it about me. I'm just saying this is why I say we should properly assess it and categorize it in its right fashion. And so when we start talking about history, we're talking about who the player is, what the player did, how it fares, or how they fare statistically when it's all said and done. What did this person achieve as an individual? What did this person achieve on their team from that aspect? What did they do to impact basketball to be considered a historical player? Now, without seeing this person with my natural eye, but hearing of his reputation, and yes, I was alive when the great late Raymond Lewis was playing basketball. I had parents, uncles, aunts that saw him play, knew of him, and as I aforementioned, we were on the east side of Los Angeles, where Fremont, Jeff, and a lot of those Southern League teams were powerhouses. Yes, there were great CIF teams as well, because Verbum Day was always a historical program. You had, of course, Mater Day wasn't really on the scene back then in the 70s and 60s, so I won't really mention that team as a CIF team, but there were other teams. There were my alma mater, Morningside High School. There was Inglewood High School. There were so many great teams. Long Beach Poly, historical program. So you're talking about an era of basketball and players that represented these eras that were just exceptional. And I want to bring up guys that were sort of unsung, guys that you really did not see play in college, You didn't see them play in the pros. You pretty much found these guys leaving high school and becoming street ballers. They just became crazy legends. I can think of this one gentleman in particular. He went to Verbum Day, and his life kind of made a shift. But a guy named Maxwell, he was out of the Nickerson Gardens. He was, I think, the class of maybe 82, 81, if I'm correct. I know a lot of those guys in that Verbum Day fraternity were closely knit, and they were from either Watts or Compton and even South Central Los Angeles. So Maxwell comes to mind for me, and he was deemed as a Los Angeles street ball legend. He's one of the Venice Beach all-time greats that came through those tournament programs, and he's just a guy that has been mythical in a sense, but he was a tremendous talent. I got a chance to play against him in many different leagues, and from my understanding, he was pretty much a shell of himself at that time because of some of the things that he had gone through in his life, but he was still a great talent. He was tough to guard. He was pretty much a force to be reckoned with, and fortunately, it was good battles that I had with him. There's another guy that comes to my mind. His name was Charles Webb, and Charlie Webb played at Fremont High School. He's resting in peace. He's no longer with us, but he was a tremendous, tremendous talent. He didn't really get an opportunity to shine in college, although he did go to junior college, and then he went to I think a D3 or NAIA school, and I got a chance to play against him in high school, but also in the college summer league. It was hosted at Inglewood High School back in 1985. This particular year with Jerry Weber and Marty Blakes, who was at the time the biggest NBA scout at that time, and so it was a great opportunity to see some of these guys, like the two I mentioned, that really did not get to the pros. They did not have the stellar career that we read about. But when you talk about LA players, you have to mention these type of guys. And the third guy, I have to mention him. He's also resting in peace. He was a guy that actually put his hands or fingerprints on most of us who were aspiring to be great point guards, and it was a guy named Jason Works. Jason Works was pretty much a Baldwin Hills guy. He grew up in the hills of Baldwin, Windsor, View Park. He taught us how to condition. His whole thing was about being in the best shape that you could be in. So Jason Works is an unsung hero to me, and he's a name that a lot of guys only mention when it comes to playground basketball. But he played in high school. He started out at Crenshaw High School. Eventually he transferred and went to Dorsey High School. They had a great point guard, Michael Lloyd, who was there, and they shared time somewhat, and eventually he moved on, and Michael Lloyd went to UNLV, and then Jason Works signed with UC Irvine. And it's just, these are three guys that comes to my mind that were point guards. I'm speaking about point guards because I think when we begin to talk about players, we just bunch them together. We don't put them in their proper position, because back then, let's be honest, in our era of the 60s and 70s and 80s, we had positions. We had a center, we had a power forward, we had a small forward, we had a shooting guard, and we had a point guard. And that was how the system was ran. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. okay? And I know guys had tremendous talent. They played multiple positions. They were able to do a lot of different things. They were able to shoot. They were able to dribble. They were able to pass. Eldred Hudson was a mini Magic Johnson to me. He was about 6'6", 6'7". He could handle the ball. He could pass the ball. He could play in the post. He could shoot the ball. He had mid-range. He could jump. He was athletic. And he had the flair. So you got to understand that there are guys that were super talented that were confined to playing a particular position. However, the numbers don't lie. We still have to go on the numbers. We have to go on what guys has done statistically. Did they win? Did they become an all-time assist leader? Did they become an all-time scorer? Did they set any records? Did they have any all-time steals? What did they do statistically? Did they win any championships? Did they make any honors like All-CIF? Were they first team? Were they third team? Were they honorable mention? Did they make any All-American teams? Were there Streets and Smith, Parades All-American? Did they make Nike All-American? Did they make Adidas All-American? What type of accolades did these guys actually receive? And so when you start to look at it statistically, the numbers don't lie. And then you have to turn around and say, who did they play against? What was the era like? What was the competition when they went head-to-head with other top point guards? What did they do against these guys? Was it consistent? Was it a one-time deal? Was it in the playoffs? Was it in crunch time? There are so many elements. What type of presentation did they game have? Were they aggressive? Were they finesse? Were they flashy? Were they basic, conventional? What type of style did these guys bring to the game? And more importantly, who knew them? What was their reputation like? What were they known for? Did they have a specific move? Did they, what made them special? And so you have to factor all these things in, which will help point to us the breakdown. I think Jacque Vaughn is a guy who's rarely mentioned. He's rarely talked about. Jacque Vaughn dominated high school in his era. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Jacque Vaughn statistically was doing numbers that were phenomenal at the point guard position. Jacque Vaughn won. Jacque Vaughn became a premier All-American. Jacque Vaughn was the top 2 point guard in his class. Jacque Vaughn, received so many accolades. He's one of the all-time assist leaders in Southern California. Not just Southern California, in California history. I believe he has more assists than Jason Kidd. I have to look that up because I know Jason Kidd had staggering numbers. But you got to understand, they're all in the same era. Jason Kidd came out of high school in 1992. Jacque Vaughn came out of high school in 1993. They're all in there together. Chris Ford, he was also in that class of 91. I believe Chris Ford came out in 91. So when you start looking at these guys, you must break them down statistically, and you must look at the accolades that they received during their tenure. Okay, so I mentioned 4 elite point guards, Jacque being 5. I think, and I'm not numbering, I'm just saying, I mentioned Maxwell, I mentioned Raymond Lewis, of course, I mentioned Jacque Vaughn, I mentioned Jason Works, and I mentioned, I believe, I said Maxwell. So, Charlie Webb. Okay, I mentioned Maxwell twice. Forgive me for that. So you got Charlie Webb, you got Maxwell, you got Jacque Vaughn, you got Jason Works, and you got, of course, the great late Raymond Lewis. Now, these are just guys that I'm talking about today. I'm going to allow some of the other guys from different eras that I believe were phenomenal top tier point guards to come out of our area. And of course, I gotta save one of my guys for last, because he's a guy that I grew up with, a guy that we honed our skills together, and he was a guy that was just very, very special, especially at his size. So I would consider him sort of like my ace in the hole. I'm yet to make contact with him about this particular subject and podcast episode, but we're going to get him into the studio so we can talk about his career and his history and how the things came about in his life. So I want to fairly assess this by saying to you, let's properly categorize and assimilate the talent that we're talking about on social media. I know New York has point guards that they mention all the time, which I love their concept and theme, because they talk about the entire state of New York as it relates to their talent. They don't just single out a guy from Brooklyn as opposed to a guy from Long Island, but they do talk about the historical attributes or contributions that these guys have made to the state of New York. Now, lastly, before I end this particular subject, I want to say that it's no knock on guys who excelled and did well in high school as a point guard. You didn't have to make the pros in order for us to give you your flowers for what you did on the high school level. There were many guys that people failed to mention that really excelled on the high school varsity level. You got some guys who actually played varsity from 9th grade to their senior year. And some of these guys were actual starters. I can mention one off the top, but I'm not going to do it as of yet. But there were several guys who actually started varsity from 9th grade until their senior year. That was unheard of in our day. As talented as guys were, it was unheard of, because you pretty much had to be a dominant big man or swing player to just play varsity in the 9th grade in the 60s and 70s. They made you play on the lower levels, and we know in college, and we're not talking about college, but in college they made all incoming freshmen play intramural lower level sports. Okay, they couldn't play what they considered varsity college sports back in the 50s and 60s. So with that being said, let's properly evaluate the talent based on statistics, based on what these young people accomplished on the high school level and who they were, what era they were a part of. We can even, I would like to even rate the eras from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s into the 2000s. I wasn't around in the 50s, so I'm not going to try to assess an era that I never saw. I was born in the 60s. I got a tad bit of information that I've done the research, that I got a chance to look at film-wise and things of that nature. So I know of the era, but I won't say that that was my era. The 70s were definitely my era. I saw so much local talent in Southern California, from the San Diego area all the way up to the Bay. I know of some great players that came out of the Bay that I was exposed to I would say early in high school, I was exposed to some of the top players in the Bay Area. That's San Francisco all the way down to, I would say, Bakersfield. To me, that's Northern Cal. A lot of people won't consider Bakersfield Northern Cal, but it's all Northern Cal, okay? The last thing I want to say before I close this episode is let's just do more research. Let's take our time. Let's figure out who's who, and let's keep guys in their position. We're talking about premier Los Angeles, SoCal point guards. We're looking for the top point guards in Southern California that will make up just a slew of information that I believe we all need to accomplish, okay? And so with that being said, I'm gonna ask if you would like, subscribe, share, ring the notification button so that you'll be abreast as to when we're airing the next episode, so that you will find enjoyment and pleasure in having conversation. Listen, put something in the chat, communicate with us, make suggestions, give us information that we can research and that we can learn together. We're on this journey together. So this episode is coming to a stop. I'm so proud to present it to you once again. Thank you so much. I'm Hoopy, your host. See you again. Peace. I'm out.